In this video, I'm going to be discussing Benjamin Godard's Allegretto for flute and piano. Make sure you stay tuned to the end so that you can learn all the practice tips and performance practices that you'll need to perform this piece.
The first thing we're going to discuss is the style of the piece. As you can hear, the piece has a very lighthearted and joyous quality to it. We want to bring out these qualities by keeping an open tone quality throughout and choosing a tempo that creates a flowing feeling without sounding out of control. I encourage you to look at the many free recordings available of this piece on YouTube, Spotify, and other sources. I've heard this piece played at quarter note equals 100 up through 112, 120, and the fastest that I heard was at quarter note equals 132. Now, I think that this piece can work at many different tempos. If your tempo is around 90 or 88, I think that it can be valid and can work for you to communicate what you want to communicate about the piece. Ultimately, I would encourage you to aim for a tempo that's around 108 for the quarter note. There are several backing tracks that are available for the piece in tempos that range from quarter note equals 88 up through quarter note equals 112.
The most important thing you need to communicate about this piece is joy.
Next, we're going to look at some of the specific aspects of style throughout the piece.
Traditionally, there are some ritordandos that we add to the piece. You can choose to do these or not, but if you choose to do them, here are the places that you'll want to look at. 2 before A and the corresponding part later in the piece. And some people also put a ritardando in the 4 bars that follow D until you get back to the main theme that is right at the beginning. As we look at the rhythm in this piece, everything is pretty straightforward. However, there are a couple tricky spots. First is the piano part in the beginning. You want to make sure that you understand what's happening in the piano part before you start so that you're not thrown off. The piano part starts like this. It's low, high, high, low, high, high, and you want to listen for that part. That rhythm is 1 and 1 and 1 and you start. Here's what it sounds like. You also want to make sure that you're really careful about the rhythm in the ties. One challenging spot is 4 before B. Here you want to make sure that you get off the tie and really practice that rhythm with the metronome.
Here I'm just starting on the A quarter note and working to make sure I get to each beat accurately. Next, I move up the tempo slightly and continue to work in small groups, starting on both the A quarter note and the G sharp. Make sure that you're thinking with rhythmic precision. E endo 2, E endo 1. E endo 2, E endo 1. Once you've practiced this in smaller groups, you can start adding larger sections together.
Another difficult tied rhythm is 4 after B. Here you want to make sure that you're coming in with the 16th notes right on 2. So I would practice it. And make sure that that G is right on 2 with the metronome. Finally, let's talk about some of the technical challenges in this piece. Here at the beginning, when you're first starting to learn this piece, the best way to practice it is to get in this lyrical style. All right, so practice it really slowly, under tempo, and just try and treat it like it's the most beautiful melody you've ever played. As you're playing this really lyrically, you want to make sure that you have the best tone possible, that you're reaching down into that low register. This is a great piece to work on building your low register tone, and just make sure that you're instilling confidence in those low notes. So if you keep getting to that low C and it doesn't speak, then practice putting a fermata on it and see if you can build that muscle memory for the placement of that note. As you work to build the tempo of this piece, you can use different practice rhythms and various practice techniques to help you work on that tempo. Two methods that I really prefer in this piece are beat-to-beat practice. So that would be like this, where I'm just going from beat to beat, and I'm just focusing on one beat at a time, maybe doing several repetitions, and then I go to the next beat. You can even string a couple together beat by beat where you repeat the first note of every group. And then also using practice rhythms, you can do long, short, long, short, long, or one that I think that works really well in this is one triplet. So on each group of 4 notes, you're gonna have a quarter note and then a triplet. So it's 1 triplet 1. Here's what it sounds like. And you just use those 4 notes like that, keeping in those groupings just to build your accuracy and the speed. The next challenging part about this piece is 4 after C. We have this chromatic passage, and we want to make sure that all the notes are played really accurately and really evenly. You'll notice in this pattern that the first 2 bars are purely chromatic. They have various dips and turns through there, but it stays completely with the chromatic scale. However, in the 3rd and 4th bar after C, we have one whole step that is in the midst of all those half steps. So you want to make sure that you get that leap from D flat to E flat in the 3rd and 4th notes of that bar. And then the rest of it is chromatic. To improve your finger technique for this section, I highly recommend practicing your chromatic scale. You'll need to practice it in lots of different contexts, so I recommend checking out the diddly dump exercise that's listed in the description below. Next, we have 4 bars before D. Here we have these arpeggiated figures that can be quite challenging for the finger technique. First, I would practice the actual arpeggios. So in 4 bars before D, we have what's called a D major arpeggio. And this would be spelled D, F sharp, A, D. And you can practice that in a 2-octave form. Starting on D, or since we need it from A to A in this piece, I'm going to practice it like that. You notice that I played it up and down, even though we only need the ascending version for this piece. We have a different arpeggio that is 3 before D. I think it's really good to incorporate all of your arpeggio work in your solo playing. So just try it, those 2 octaves up and down, just to get that finger pattern really clear in your fingers. Coming down, we have an E flat major arpeggio, but it adds an F at the end. The notes in the E flat major arpeggio are E flat, G, and B flat. You can play this just 1 octave or extend it beyond. as you're practicing this passage in the piece, you want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of how the rhythm works. So I would practice it in groups where you're just focusing on getting from beat to beat. So we would have rest. I'm just leaving off that first F sharp. And then I'm going to go F sharp to the high A. Again, you could practice this really slowly. If you practice it slowly and relaxed, then you're going to be practicing it with a better sound and better technique. If we practice relaxed, we have a much better chance of playing and performing relaxed. Next, we get to the trills at D. Here, you want to make sure that your trills, you know which note that you're trilling to. So, we always trill from the note that's written to the note above it in the key signature. So our first trill is D written, and we're going to trill to the note above it in the key signature, which is going to be E flat. So that D to E flat, that's a pretty simple trill. We're just going to trill the pinky. It's easy in terms of what fingers we're pressing. However, trilling a pinky can be challenging, I realize. And then we have E flat to F. We don't want to do this cross fingering of putting this one down and picking these up. So we actually use the wrong fingering for E flat. So you put everything down except for the A flat key. And then you trill 5 and 6 for that one. E natural to F is pretty simple. E to F, we just use the regular fingerings. Same thing for F to G on the last trill. Now, in order to learn this, I take everything away. So I'm going to take the trills away and the grace notes, and we're just going to play the basic rhythm.
Next, I'm going to add in the grace notes. Next, I'll practice the trills without the grace notes. Then, after many repetitions of each of these variations, I'll put it all together.
Remember that this part can also be played with a ritardando. Next, let's take a look at 11 before E. Here we have a passage in the high register that has lots of tricky fingerings and can give many students trouble.
First, I suggest practicing this lyrically like we did at the beginning. It also happens to be the same notes that we have at the beginning, it just uses an A flat instead of A natural. Once you have played this through several times lyrically with a great sound, you can go on to practicing it with different practice rhythms. Again, I highly recommend practicing it with the quarter note triplet rhythm or beat-to-beat practice. 2 E and a 1, 2 E and a 1.
You can use these practice techniques all the way through the piece, but I especially recommend it here because the fingerings do get so challenging. Finally, we have this ending arpeggio. If you look at the last 5 bars of this piece, you'll see that there are just 3 notes in the entire last line of the piece. So we're going to practice those out of context. They are B flat, D, F. And back down. You can extend this pattern to go down to the low D. You can play it in various combinations. Or just practice the groupings that are written here. Make sure that you're practicing them with the rhythm that they have.
And a 1, E and a 2, E and a 1, E and a 2.
watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to this channel and share it with a friend. Happy practicing!